Welcome, gentle listener, to another journey through the quieter corridors of history. Tonight, we invite you to step away from the hum of modern life and into a world where silence was sacred, where knowledge flowed like precious ink across endless pages, and where the simple act of preserving wisdom required a devotion that would exhaust most souls today. Imagine yourself settling into the comfort of your bed, leaving behind the constant notifications and electric lights of your world. In the dimly lit lamplight, the only sounds are the rustling of pages and the scratching of a quill. Your sanctuary is filled with the scent of parchment and old paper. The air is alive with the energy of countless stories waiting to be discovered. You reach out to touch a nearby volume, its leather cover worn smooth by countless hands that have sought its wisdom before. You think about how you got here to this place and time. How did you become a librarian? What does this job entail? What is the secret to spending your days surrounded by such treasures? The answer, my friend, lies in the dedication of thousands of unsung heroes who devoted their lives to the preservation and propagation of knowledge. During the Islamic Golden Age, that remarkable period between the 8th and 13th centuries, when Muslim scholars translated, debated, and built upon the works of ancient Greek, Indian, and Persian philosophers, these men and women, most of them unnamed in history books, toiled in the greatest libraries of Baghdad, Cairo, Cordoba, and other centers of learning, ensuring that the ideas and discoveries of the past would not be lost but shared with the world. Your day begins before sunrise with the opening of the library. As the first rays of sunlight touch the eastern walls, you join your fellow librarians in the cool, quiet hall. The library, a grand, echoing space filled with rows upon rows of books, is your world. The air is thick with the scent of aged paper and leather, a testament to the countless stories held within the silent walls. The soft murmur of scholars discussing their work drifts through the high archways, mingling with the gentle lapping of a nearby fountain. It's a symphony of intellectual pursuits, a melody that has lulled you into this peaceful rhythm of life. As a librarian, your duties are many. You check the daily wear and tear on the books, mend torn pages, erase the markings of careless readers, and organize new acquisitions. Each book is a treasure, each shelf a testament to the vast sea of human knowledge. The rhythmic scrape of your quill against parchment becomes the soundtrack of your days. Hours melt away as you work, lost in the timeless pursuit of preserving knowledge. But your role is more than just a caretaker of books. You are a silent partner in the pursuit of wisdom, ensuring that these invaluable texts remain accessible for scholars from across the known world. You watch as Muslim scholars of various ethnicities and backgrounds gather here, united in their thirst for knowledge. Some have traveled great distances, braving deserts and mountains to reach this oasis of learning. Others come from bustling city centers, seeking refuge in the tranquil halls of the library. Together, they form a vibrant community, a microcosm of the diverse world outside, all brought together by the unifying language of scholarship. Here in the heart of the Islamic Golden Age, the works of ancient Greek philosophers are being translated into Arabic, ensuring that their ideas will reach new audiences. The scholars discuss and debate these translations, building upon the wisdom of the past and adding their own insights to the grand tapestry of human knowledge. You witness heated debates as scholars argue over the precise wording of a passage, striving for accuracy in these vital translations. Each word is a building block in the construction of understanding, and they are determined to lay a solid foundation for future generations. The House of Wisdom, also known as Dar al-Hekmah, is more than just a library. It's a beacon of intellectual exploration, a hub where the boundaries of human understanding are stretched and where the past and future of knowledge collide. Here, amidst towering shelves and hushed whispers, you discover the essence of the House of Wisdom, a place where the threads of human history intertwine, and where your role as a librarian becomes more than just a profession, it becomes a calling. In the cool twilight hours, after the day's scholars have packed up their things and departed, you find yourself alone in the vast expanse of the library. The weight of the countless stories surrounding you settles upon your shoulders. It's a humbling feeling knowing that you are responsible for safeguarding these treasures of human history. And so you continue your work, deciphering faded script, mending torn pages, and cataloging new arrivals. With each book you touch, you feel a profound connection to the countless hands that have handled these same volumes before you. You are part of an unbroken chain, a lineage of scholars dedicated to the preservation and propagation of knowledge. And as the final rays of sunlight fade from the sky, you extinguish the lamps, plunging the library into darkness. The silence is profound, broken only by the whisper of the wind through the open windows in this quiet solitude. You contemplate the secrets held within these books, the stories of civilizations long gone, the echoes of voices from distant lands and times. The darkness is not empty, but pregnant with the potential for discovery. It's a reminder that within these very walls, some of the greatest minds of the age have pondered life, the universe, and everything in between. You are not just a librarian, you are a silent guardian of human history. As the night deepens, the library transforms into something magical, a realm where shadows dance and imagination takes flight. In the flickering lamplight, the bookshelves seem to stretch endlessly into the darkness, holding secrets waiting to be uncovered. The silence is no longer empty, but alive with the whispers of countless stories. You feel a sense of peace in the midst of this intellectual treasure trove, knowing that you are part of something bigger than yourself. Finally, as the night draws to a close, you lock the doors of the library, its treasures safe for now. The rhythmic clang of the closing gates echoes through the empty halls, signaling the end of another day. As you step out into the starlit night, the cool air on your skin, you feel the weight of your responsibilities lifting slightly. But the solace is short-lived, for tomorrow, the sun will rise again, bringing with it a new set of challenges and opportunities to shape the course of human history. And you, dear listener, will be there to meet them, ready to embrace the quiet heroism of preserving knowledge in the face of endless challenges. Till next time. May your own pursuit of wisdom bring you as much joy and fulfillment as the librarians of the Islamic Golden Age found in the House of Wisdom. And remember, in the quietest corners of history, the most extraordinary stories often unfold. As the sun climbs higher, your assistant arrives bearing fresh pomegranate juice and a clay lamp abbers with oil. With the precious liquid ready and your quill sharpened, you turn your attention to the day's task. Today's assignment comes from the Caliph himself, a request for a copy of Ptolemy's Almagest, a Greek astronomical treatise so revered it's become mandatory reading in many scholarly circles. More than that, though, you know it contains the very coordinates of the astrolabe, a tool used to chart the stars, which the Abbasid Caliphate desperately seeks to possess. It's one thing to translate a book. You must remain faithful to the original text while adapting it for a different language and culture. But to copy a book is even more demanding. Every stroke of the quill must mirror the original, respecting not just the words, but the spaces between them. It's a meditation on the nature of knowledge itself. Hours pass without your awareness as you lose yourself in the rhythmic repetition of copying. This isn't mere mechanical transcription. It's an intellectual ballet where precision and intuition must work in harmony. You're not just a scribe, you're a translator of thought, carrying on the legacy of great scholars who came before you. Even the most mundane passages require intense focus. Take, for instance, the seemingly simple directions on how to construct an astrolabe. You pause, considering the right angle you need to form with your compasses. How do you communicate such a concept in Arabic without introducing ambiguity? The answer lies in the precise selection of words and phrases. Clarity isn't just a virtue in astronomy, it's a necessity for any field of knowledge. You move on to more complex sections detailing the movement of constellations, the changing seasons, and their impact on agriculture. Even medical practices tied to celestial alignments. Each page you fill is both a record of human achievement and a tangible piece of history. In the vast library, there are entire sections devoted to works whose ideas have been eclipsed by newer discoveries, but they aren't discarded. They're preserved for the simple reason that knowledge once created can never truly be destroyed. It might become obscured, even ridiculed, but eventually its value is rediscovered. Think of the Indian mathematician Brahmagupta, whose work on zero and negative numbers was lost to the West for centuries. Or the contributions of ancient Greek philosophers like Pythagoras and Euclid, whose theories laid the groundwork for modern mathematics. Even in the 10th century, the works of Aristotle were considered outdated by some. Yet you know that his influence on scientific thought is undeniable. And then there are the countless scholars of Islamic nations whose advancements in algebra, optics, and astronomy often get overlooked. In a few moments, you pause to admire the intricate design of the astrolabe. It isn't just a scientific instrument. It's a masterpiece of engineering. As you trace the lines of its delicate construction, you think about how every discovery, every theorem recorded in these books, was once someone's bold conjecture. The spirit of that initial spark of insight still resonates within these pages. The act of preserving these ideas, of ensuring they survive the ravages of time, gives your work a profound meaning. It's not enough simply to hold on to the past. You must present it in a way that makes sense to each new generation. As the midday heat begins to settle over the city, a welcome break arrives in the form of afternoon prayers. You set aside your quill, the uninked half of the scroll, carefully wrapped to preserve its freshness, and join the other residents of Baghdad in the ritual of worship. In the courtyard of your modest house, you kneel and wash yourself according to the tradition. The water, blessed for its purity by the Imam, cleanses not just your body, but also your mind, preparing you for the spiritual reflection that follows. As you recite the verses from memory, you feel a deep sense of continuity with your ancestors in faith. Yet you also recognize the universality of the message. It transcends cultural boundaries, speaking to the shared hopes, fears, and dreams of humanity. These moments of prayer and reflection are not just obligatory duties, they're anchors in your life, grounding you in the midst of your scholarly pursuits. Returning to your work refreshed, you notice the familiar ache in your spine intensifying. A lifetime spent hunched over manuscripts has taken its toll on your body, but you hesitate at the thought of stopping. This library is your sanctuary, the manuscripts your companions. What would you do without the quiet rustle of parchment, the scratch of quills, the murmur of voices translating the wisdom of the ancients? As the sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across the scriptorium, you find yourself entering a state of flow. Time seems to fade away as you focus intently on the text before you. There's a kind of magic in deciphering ancient languages, in piecing together the thoughts of minds long gone. It's as if the spirits of those ancient thinkers are whispering to you through the ages, sharing their insights and discoveries. You lean back, stretching your stiff neck, and gaze up at the skylight, watching the play of light and shadow as the day draws to a close. The sight stirs in you a profound appreciation for the passage of time. Just as the sun charts its daily course across the heavens, you too have followed your own path of learning and discovery. You reflect on the lives of the scholars whose works you've dedicated your life to preserving, men like Al-Khwarizmi, whose contributions to mathematics and astronomy are foundational to modern science, or Al-Ghazali, the philosopher, whose writings have had a lasting impact on theology and metaphysics. Their names echo through the corridors of history, and you feel honored to be part of their intellectual lineage. As darkness finally envelops Baghdad, you lock up the library, its treasures secure for the night. The heavy wooden doors, emblazoned with the seal of the Caliphate, stand as silent sentinels guarding the accumulated wisdom of generations past. Walking home beneath the star-studded sky, you ponder the ephemeral nature of existence. The library, with its countless volumes, strives to capture and preserve the essence of human thought, but it, too, is subject to the relentless march of time. Yet in that very impermanence you find solace. Each day brings new challenges, new opportunities to learn and grow. And with each sunrise, you awake ready to embrace the unending cycle of discovery and preservation. Entering your humble abode, you shed the dust of the day, mindful of the fragility of life and the preciousness of each moment. The scent of roasting lamb wafts from the kitchen, reminding you of the simple joys that sustain you through the rigors of your work. As you partake in the evening meal with your family, you share stories of the day's events, your voice echoing with the satisfaction of a life well lived. The laughter of your children rings through the house, chasing away the shadows of the day and filling your heart with warmth. In the quiet solitude of your bedroom, surrounded by the comforting shadows, you prepare for sleep. Your body, weary from a lifetime of study, yearns for rest. But your mind remains active, still turning over the complexities of the texts you've devoted your life to understanding. The darkness around you deepens, and you find yourself drifting into slumber. Your dreams filled with the whispers of ancient scholars and the promise of new discoveries yet to be made. welcome to my channel. Today, we are going to spend a day in the life of a medieval scribe. And unlike most of our previous history videos, this one takes place not in the Middle East, but in medieval Europe. More specifically, in Paris, at the scriptorium, or preparation room, of the renowned Abbey of St. Denis, nestled just outside the city's bustling walls. Now let's go back to the 8th century, where the day starts early, as it always did for monks, with morning prayers at the rise of the sun. After which, as the sky brightens, you make your way to the scriptorium. The long, narrow room is filled with the morning light streaming through the high windows set above eye level to avoid glare. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of drying ink and the low murmur of conversation. Some scholars are poring over books, others are copying manuscripts, and a few are engaged in what you're about to begin, preparing new vellum for writing. You approach a long, sturdy table where several assistants have already gathered. Their tools are laid out before them: knives for trimming the vellum, sandpaper for smoothing the surface, and metal burnishers for polishing the final product. Today's order is an important one: 200 sheets for the head librarian, Brother Thomas, who will use them for a new gospel book he's been commissioned to write. The first step is making the mixture that will give the vellum its distinctive golden hue. You turn to the assistant beside you, a young man whose nimble fingers and sharp eyes make him the perfect scribe. Together, you weigh out powdered bone, or more accurately, bone char, a byproduct of the butchering process that lent itself well to the creation of pigments. This will be mixed with a gum arabic solution that will need to be heated very slowly to prevent scorching. It's a delicate balance, and if the temperature rises too quickly, the mixture will seize up, ruining both the preparation and the precious vellum sheets. As the gum begins to warm, a sweet, slightly acrid smell fills the preparation room, a scent that will cling to your robes throughout the day. In the corner, an older scribe boils water for the next step in the process. He's a veteran of many such preparations, his face lined and leathery like old vellum, his hands gnarled and twisted like the branches of an ancient oak. While the water reaches a boil, you dip a small knife into the mixture, taking care to scrape off any excess with a clean cloth. Now the real test: applying the mixture to the first sheet of vellum. Your hands work from memory, guided by a lifetime of experience. You don't need to see the tool in front of you to apply it perfectly. In fact, seeing it would only get in the way. The gum mixture should form a thin, even layer, not too dark, not too light, just right. Once applied, the sheet is placed on a rack to dry. Around you, the other scribes are finishing their own preparations, each working with a practiced hand, each focused on their task. As the morning progresses, the library begins to fill with the other scholars and copyists. Each person moves with deliberate quiet, knowing that their work contributes to a larger symphony of intellectual preservation. Eventually, Brother Thomas arrives, his black robes giving him an air of authority that commands attention and respect. He examines the prepared sheets, nodding his approval. They are perfect. He assigns you to a desk, a heavy wooden surface, scarred by years of use, positioned to catch the best natural light from the high windows. Though the windows are high, you're still careful not to stand directly beneath them, lest you block the precious light from reaching those below. After a brief rest, it's time to begin copying. You know what today's assignment will be? For the past few weeks, the library has been expecting a delivery of recently acquired texts from the Great Library of Alexandria. Word came yesterday that they had arrived, and now you were to catalog them. You wash your hands in the basin provided, pull up a chair to the desk, and prepare your materials. The ink is ground fresh each morning, mixed with water and stored in a small ceramic jar. A goose feather quill, carefully selected and trimmed, is your primary tool. Finally, the brayer, a small, smooth cylinder made of wood or metal used to smooth the vellum and remove air bubbles. You open the first volume carefully, supporting its spine with a specially crafted wooden rest. The pages release the distinctive scent of old parchment, a complex mixture of animal hide, ancient inks, and the subtle mustiness of time itself. Before you can begin cataloging, you must identify the texts inside. Most are written in Latin, though there are some in Greek and even a few in Hebrew. Your Latin is excellent, having studied in Rome during your youth. Your Greek is adequate for philosophical works. but these texts are mostly medical and contain many technical terms that will require further study. You take notes in the margins, highlighting key passages and underlining unfamiliar words. Once you've identified the main text, you can begin the cataloging process, noting its condition, any unique features or marginalia, and assessing whether it requires immediate preservation work. If the text dates back a few centuries, it might have faded considerably. In that case, you may want to add a support layer to keep the pages together as they become increasingly brittle. Or perhaps the cover is damaged and needs reattaching. Whatever the case, you record it all in your catalog. The physical demands of this work become apparent as the morning lengthens. Your back begins to ache from hunching over the manuscripts, and your eyes water from the strain of deciphering faded text. The reed pen in your hand grows heavy, and the careful formation of each letter requires deliberate effort. This isn't the quick, casual writing of everyday correspondence. Each stroke must be perfect, each word clearly legible for scholars who may consult your work decades from now. As the hours pass, you move from text to text, each one a portal to another time and place, each one containing knowledge that must be preserved for future generations. The quiet scratching of quills is the soundtrack of the scriptorium. Occasionally, the sharp bark of a dog from outside the abbey walls cuts through the quiet. A reminder that even in this tranquil space, life goes on. By late morning, the sun climbs higher in the sky, casting the scriptorium in a warm glow. You pause to sharpen your quill, the tip of the feather scraping against the rough stone hearth. Outside, the sound of hammers and saws drifts in, a reminder that construction work is also underway on the abbey. You return to the catalog, where you left off, and continue recording the details of each text. The hours slip by, and soon it's time for lunch. You fold your copybook and put down your quill, rising stiffly from your chair. It's a welcome break, and you look forward to the simple fare of bread, cheese, and wine that awaits you in the refectory. The day continues in much the same way. You work through the afternoon, taking only the briefest of pauses for prayer, or to answer the occasional visitor. The tasks are monotonous but important. Each page you turn, each word you copy, brings you closer to the heart of medieval intellectual life. You are preserving knowledge for future generations. As the sun begins its slow descent, the shadows lengthen across the scriptorium. You work until the last rays of daylight fade from the windows, then pack up your things and leave the library. The day is done. You're tired, but satisfied with the work completed. Another batch of texts are now ready to be added to the great library's collection, their secrets revealed and preserved for all time. You walk back towards the main abbey, your steps echoing in the twilight. The scent of incense from the evening prayer still lingers in the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of the nearby forest. With the work of the day behind you, you join the other monks in prayer, giving thanks for the knowledge you've safeguarded, and for the quiet strength that allows you to do it day after day. And that's our video about the daily life of a medieval scribe. So what did you think? Let us know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel. The scriptorium is silent, except for the scratching of quills on parchment. Around you, scribes labor over their tasks, some copying ancient texts, others creating new ones. In this hallowed space where words become legacy, you have chosen to be a scribe, and as the sun climbs higher in the sky, your day begins. You rise with the sun, drawn from sleep by its golden fingers, reaching through the window slits. The hours before sunrise and after sunset belong to you and the other scribes, a sacred time when the heat of the day is past and the cool air invites contemplation. Your small cottage beside the scriptorium provides a sanctuary from the elements. Inside, the remnants of your breakfast, a piece of bread dipped in wine, sit waiting. You push it aside, though there's little appetite in the morning stillness. As the first rays touch the eastern wall, chasing away the last vestiges of darkness, you make your way to the scriptorium. It is here that you will spend the daylight hours, surrounded by the company of great minds, who have come to preserve the wisdom of antiquity. Among them are the erudites, those who read and study the texts, and the amanuenses, who assist with more menial tasks, such as cleaning and repairing books. Each plays a vital role in the grand enterprise of preserving knowledge. By midday, the heat begins to affect both you and the manuscripts. The library's design helps thick stone walls keep the interior cool. and the positioning of windows creates cross-ventilation that moves the air without creating disturbing drafts. But still, you must be vigilant. Certain texts cannot be exposed to temperature fluctuations, and you spend precious time carefully moving the most sensitive volumes to the climate-controlled storage areas deeper within the building. The afternoon brings different challenges. A group of visiting scholars from Cordoba has arrived, seeking access to specific astronomical texts. You watch them enter the scriptorium, their robes whispering against the stone floor. They seek rare material, and you know that procuring it will interrupt your own work. For now, you return to your task, adding another layer of text to your growing scroll. Your mind drifts to the texts you've already copied, each a testament to human curiosity and creativity. You think of the long journey your own book will undertake, how its words will be read and studied long after you are gone. The scriptorium door opens again, and you look up to see one of the erudites approaching. He carries with him a leather-bound volume so large that you can barely see its title. Its pages are filled with diagrams and calculations, and you recognize it as one of the prized possessions of this library. The erudite requests that you prepare it for his consultation, a task that fills you with a mix of excitement and trepidation. You carefully dust the cover, then use a long-handled brush to remove any loose particles from the text block. Next, you gently open the book to the requested passage, taking care not to damage the fragile pages. As you do, you notice that the margins are filled with notes and sketches in a hand you don't recognize. You wonder who might have owned this book and what secrets it holds. Your attention returns to the present as the erudite begins to study the text, his voice low and focused. You watch him as he reads, his brow furrowed in concentration. You know that what he is reading here could change the course of history. With the book open at the passage the erudite is studying, you take a small stool beside him. Though you cannot read the specialized astronomical texts, you recognize the importance of the moment. Here, in this quiet room, the sum of human knowledge is being advanced, and you feel privileged to be a part of it. A cough echoes through the scriptorium, drawing your attention to a figure standing near the window. It is one of the amanuenses, his face pale and drawn. He gestures toward the window, and you follow his gaze to see a group of men entering the courtyard. These men you know are from the cathedral chapter, the group of clergy who oversee the library. Their arrival always brings the threat of disruption to your peaceful work. You turn back to your task, hoping they will not disturb you, but you know it is only a matter of time before they come inside. The heavy oak doors of the scriptorium open, and a group of men enters. Their voices are loud and boisterous, and you can hear their laughter echoing through the chamber, even over the rhythmic scratching of quills. As they approach your desk, you quickly hide your scroll, not wanting your incomplete work to be scrutinized. One of the men you know is Brother Thomas, a frequent visitor to the scriptorium. He is a man of many interests, and you have often seen him poring over ancient texts in search of knowledge. Today, however, he seems in particularly high spirits. He leans back, fixing his gaze on the ceiling. "Tell me, scribe," he says, turning to you with a smile, "what is the greatest treasure held within these four walls?" You hesitate, unsure how to answer. On the one hand, you think of the ancient scrolls and codices, the very embodiment of human wisdom and creativity. On the other hand, you consider the knowledge contained in the minds of the erudites and amanuenses around you, the living repositories of countless texts and ideas. After a moment, you reply, "It is hard to say, Brother Thomas. We have the ancient texts, yes, but we also have the living minds that study them." Thomas nods, his eyes twinkling.
"Oh,"
said Scribe, "well said." And with that, he turns back to his companions, leaving you to return to your work. The hours pass, the light outside begins to fade, and you know it is nearing the end of the day. Soon the shadows will grow long, and the temperature will drop, signaling the end of your workday. The silence of the scriptorium is broken only by the scratching of pens and the murmur of voices. You pause in your copying, listening intently. What is it that you hear? Is it the whisper of ancient voices carried on the wind, or is it something more? Perhaps it is the very essence of scholarship itself, the pursuit of knowledge that has brought you to this place. But your peaceful reverie is shattered by the sound of hurried footsteps approaching your desk. You look up to see one of the erudites, his face pale and his eyes wide with excitement. "Scribe," he says, his voice trembling slightly, "I need your help." We have just received word that a shipment of new texts has arrived from Constantinople. Among them is a copy of Ptolemy's Almagest, a work of great importance to our studies. He pauses for breath, then continues. I want you to meet me at the receiving area immediately. We must inspect these texts as soon as possible. You rise from your desk, your heart pounding with anticipation. The prospect of handling newly arrived texts is always exciting, but the mention of Ptolemy's Almagest sends a thrill through you. You hurry out of the scriptorium, eager to see what treasures await you. In the dimly lit receiving area, you find the erudite examining a large scroll with a critical eye. Upon closer inspection, you see that the scroll is in poor condition, with parts of it decayed and missing. Despite its fragility, you can make out the title written in elegant Greek letters. It is indeed Ptolemy's Almagest, a comprehensive work on astronomy that has survived for centuries. Realizing the historical significance of the text, you carefully unroll it, revealing the faded ink of its ancient verses. As you examine the scroll, you notice that it contains diagrams of constellations and astronomical phenomena, as well as detailed descriptions of the cosmos. It is a privilege to behold such a rare and important text, and you take great care to preserve it for future scholars. As you continue your work, you feel a sense of purpose and excitement. To be part of a team that preserves and studies ancient texts is a rewarding experience. You know that your efforts will ensure that these invaluable works of scholarship are available for generations to come. And so your day continues, filled with the quiet satisfaction of copying and studying ancient texts. The fading light of day is a reminder that your work is part of a timeless tradition, a tradition that has brought you to this moment in history. You have just finished a morning's work in the scriptorium, copying a particularly challenging page from a rare manuscript. Sunlight streams through the open window, illuminating motes dancing in the air around you. The air is filled with the scent of parchment and ink, and the soft murmur of other scribes working nearby fills the air. But all around you, the other workers are packing up their tools and preparing for the afternoon break. The time has come for your own rest, but it is not a time for leisure. The scribe's work is never truly done, even when they set their quill down for the day. The evening brings new challenges, and as the daylight fades, you must shift from the meticulous work of the scriptorium to the equally demanding duties of the librarian. In the world of an 8th century Islamic Golden Age library, the transition from scribe to librarian is seamless, because the two roles are essentially one. You are not just a copyist who works with manuscripts, you are responsible for them. The very survival of the text you work with depends on your ability to preserve, organize, and protect them. And so, as soon as the sunlight begins to fade, you pick up your books and head to the stack rooms where your responsibilities as a librarian begin. Your first task is to examine the collection, looking for any signs of damage. Parchment deteriorates in unexpected ways, and sometimes weeks or even months can pass without you noticing a problem. Now that you're alert for issues, you're much more likely to spot them. A section of a volume with brittle parchment, a flyleaf with mold, a text where ink has bled through to the other side. You make mental notes of everything you see, adding it to the list of repairs that will need to be addressed. When the Grand Library reopens after the evening prayers, night watchmen will have secured the premises. But there will be few people around now, and this presents its own problems. Working alone in the dim lamplight, you can be an easy target for thieves or vandals. Some precautions are standard operating procedure for every librarian, like keeping the doors locked and making sure all exits are well lit so you can spot intruders outside. Others depend on the specific vulnerabilities of your location. In Baghdad, where the round stacks are made entirely of brick and reach 4 stories high, the biggest danger is simply collapsing. Soil under the foundation was never properly compacted, and as the earth shifted, some sections sank lower than others. This means not only do you have to watch out for yourself, you also need to periodically check that the entire building has unlisted further since the last time you checked. If it has, you have to redistribute the load manually, moving books until everything is balanced evenly again. In Damascus, where the library's collections are stored in interconnected rooms instead of a single stack, the issue is maintaining security. Much of the city wall surrounding the library has crumbled away and thickets have grown up in its place, providing cover for anyone wishing to sneak inside. So you always travel in a group and stick close to the center of the collection where you can see everyone. But once those precautions are taken care of, the real work of the evening begins. Like the scribe, the librarian spends long hours sitting at a desk poring over documents. They also spend a great deal of time on their feet, climbing ladders and moving stacks. To keep order, every book in the library has a number corresponding to its location, and the librarian keeps a record of exactly what is in each book. No volumes are ever removed from their designated slots unless absolutely necessary. If someone requests a text, the librarian retrieves it, checks the condition of the binding, and places it in a queue for eventual repair. On busy days, this queue can be immense, consisting of dozens of heavy volumes. Because libraries in this period function like the 24/7 free market of the internet. Users often treat books quite roughly. Pages can get ripped or detached, covers can become loose or fall off entirely, and spines can break if they get too wet. Damaged books not only look bad, they also can't be used for their intended purpose. So mending is an important part of the librarian's work. The process varies depending on how badly a book is damaged, but usually involves gluing torn pages back together, reinforcing broken spines with leather, and reattaching fallen covers. These tasks require different tools and materials. It takes practice to develop the skill and finesse needed to restore a book properly. And yet mending isn't a high priority for most librarians. It's slow, tedious work, and there are just too many books in the collection for it to be anything more than a low priority. With the needs of the library users in mind, a major part of the librarian's job is acquisition. A healthy library grows over time, and new texts arrive in a variety of ways. Some are donations from members of the royal court or wealthy merchants. Others come from expeditions organized by the Caliph himself to recover lost books from ancient cities and monasteries. Still others are purchased from traveling booksellers, who comb the countryside looking for lost manuscripts. These acquisitions are logged carefully, with the librarian recording the identity of the donor or the price paid for the text, as well as its physical attributes like the type of paper and ink used. Once recorded, the text is given a unique call number and added to the master catalog, a complete record of everything in the collection, which is itself kept in a specially designed strongroom. Here, the librarian reviews incoming texts, weeding out obvious forgeries or damaged books that aren't worth repairing. For actual books, he consults experts in the relevant field to determine what, if any, work needs to be done before they can be placed in the stacks. Sometimes nothing is needed, and the book is added to the collection immediately. Other times, the text requires stabilization before it can be studied properly. Parchment is soaked in a special solution to remove mold or insect damage, dried and then flattened by a heavy press. Books with missing pages are checked against other copies in the collection to fill in gaps, and heavily damaged texts are placed in the queue for restoration. Even if a particular book doesn't need any work, the librarian still has to record it, and that means taking painstaking notes about its contents. This is done not for the general public, but for the small group of extremely lucky scholars who are permitted to use the library's restricted collection. They might be writing a commentary on a particularly obscure point, trying to solve a difficult theological question, or researching the history of an obscure legal case. Whatever their project, these scholars can't afford to waste time tracking down every book that might contain useful information. So the librarian acts as their agent, reading through the text and writing summaries of any relevant passages. This is another opportunity for the librarian to show their learning, since doing this effectively requires expertise in many fields. An inaccurate summary could send scholars on a wild goose chase, so this work must be done thoroughly. In fact, the librarian's work is noticed and appreciated by the scholars, and it's not unheard of for especially talented individuals to be granted rare access to the collection themselves. The best libraries even allow their most learned librarians to add annotations of their own to the texts they work with, making them invaluable research resources. Once everything is acquired and organized, it's time to return to the stack rooms and organize the collection. The work of the librarian is never really done, but at least it's done for the night. You extinguish your lamps, lock the doors, and join the other workers heading home for the evening. The next morning, the process will start anew as fresh texts arrive. Scholars request materials, and the endless cycle of preservation begins once again. Every evening you must finish your rounds with a final inspection, checking the entire collection one last time to make sure everything is secure. But after a full day of labor, this is a difficult task. Sleep pulls insistently at your eyelids, and your aching back and stiff neck beg for release. Yet you dare not grow careless. The slightest lapse in attention could mean disaster. A misplaced book could lead to its loss forever. And in this age, losing a book is a catastrophe. Entire fields of knowledge can disappear if even a single copy is destroyed. Fatigue, however, is a constant companion. A scribe and librarian alike feel its oppressive weight. It's the product of long days spent hunched over manuscripts, deciphering faded ink or coaxing stubborn reeds into obedient strokes. The strain of creating order from chaos, of preserving knowledge against the relentless march of time, it's a burden carried silently, patiently. For the work must go on regardless of weariness. In the quiet hum of the scriptorium, the scratch of quills and the rustle of parchment become the soundtrack of exhaustion. Each scribe, each librarian finds their own rhythm of endurance. Some find solace in the repetitive motions of copying, allowing the rhythm of the letters to lull them into a state of focused calm. Others seek camaraderie in the shared effort, finding strength in numbers as they compare notes, swap stories, and trade quips with their colleagues. There are even those who find inspiration in the very essence of their work. For what they do is more than just a job, it's a calling. They see themselves as the inheritors of a grand tradition, carrying the torch of knowledge through the darkness, ensuring that the light of learning shines brightly for all who seek it. The world may change, empires may rise and fall, but the dedication of the scribe and the librarian endure. For as long as there are stories to tell and minds to enlighten, their work will go on, an eternal testament to the power of the written word. The flickering candlelight danced in your eyes, reflecting the silent dedication etched into every line of your face. Your fingers, stained with the ink of countless manuscripts, rested lightly on the open book before you. Outside, the world was asleep, lost to the embrace of night. But within these four quiet walls, you were wide awake. The scratching of your quill against the parchment was the only sound that dared to break the silence. A testament to the hours upon hours of meticulous work you had poured into your craft. The soft glow of the candle illuminated the worn pages, each one a portal to another time, another place filled with stories waiting to be shared. In the flickering shadows, you saw not just the words on the page, but the faces of those who had come before you, their voices whispering tales of adventure, love, loss, and everything in between. You felt a profound connection to them, a bond forged through the timeless act of storytelling. With every stroke of your quill, you breathed life into these ancient words, ensuring that they would continue to resonate through the ages. You were more than just a scribe. You were a custodian of history, a weaver of words, a keeper of stories. And as the night deepened, so did your focus. The world outside may have been asleep, but here in your humble abode, surrounded by the remnants of 1,000 yesterdays, were wide awake, your heart and mind soaring on the wings of imagination. For in this quiet sanctuary, you found not just your purpose, but your passion, your very essence. And as the first rays of dawn began to peek through the window, you knew that you had found your calling. This was your element, your haven, your home. And so you worked on. Fueled by an insatiable curiosity and a burning desire to uncover the secrets held within the ancient texts. For you were more than just a scribe. You were a seeker of knowledge, a chronicler of the past, a storyteller for the ages. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, you stepped out of your simple quarters ready to face another day of discovery. Your fingers stained with the ink of 1,000 stories, your heart brimming with the joy of 1,000 adventures. Slowly but surely, word by word, idea by idea, Al-Kindi built bridges between ancient Greece and the Islamic world. His translations weren't just scholarly works, they were cultural ambassadors, carrying the best of Greek thought to a new audience. And while his name might not be as familiar as some of his contemporaries, his contributions to the transmission of knowledge were nothing short of monumental. Imagine stepping back in time to the bustling city of Baghdad in the 9th century, where the air hums with the energy of commerce and culture. The great round city, a testament to the Abbasid Caliphate's grandeur, stretches around you, its wide boulevards lined with palaces, mosques, and gardens. Nestled in this urban labyrinth is the modest house of Abu Yusuf, Yaqub ibn Ishaq al-Kindi, a man whose life and work embodied the spirit of intellectual exploration that defined his age. Now enter al-Kindi's home, a haven of scholarship amidst the opulence of Baghdad. Here, in the tranquility of his private chambers, something remarkable is happening. A group of students has gathered, eager to learn from their teacher's vast knowledge. Al-Kindi, a man in his late 30s with an air of quiet intensity, gestures for them to sit around him. As the students settle down, you notice that Al-Kindi's house, though simple, is a testament to his dedication to learning. The walls are lined with bookshelves holding not just Arabic manuscripts, but also precious texts in Persian and Greek. The flickering light of oil lamps reveals the intricate calligraphy and faded colors of these ancient books, each one a portal to another time and place. Al-Kindi's eyes, filled with an insatiable curiosity, sweep over the faces of his students, recognizing in each one a reflection of his own youthful passion for knowledge. As the discussion deepens, Al-Kindi delves into a topic that has captivated his attention for years: the nature of being and existence. Inspired by the Greek philosophers he has studied so intently, Al-Kindi guides his students through a labyrinth of ideas, challenging them to think beyond the confines of everyday experience. He speaks not just as a teacher imparting knowledge, but as a fellow traveler on the path of discovery, eager to explore the unknown alongside his students. Their animated conversation touches upon questions that have echoed through human history. What is the origin of the universe? What is the purpose of human existence? Do we acquire true knowledge? Al-Kindi, drawing upon the wisdom of Greek thinkers such as Plato and Aristotle, encourages his students to seek answers through reason and observation, to question assumptions, and to challenge conventional wisdom. He emphasizes that the pursuit of knowledge is a journey, not a destination, and that true understanding comes not from memorizing facts, but from grappling with fundamental questions. As the evening progresses, conversation naturally shifts to the challenges they face as Muslim scholars engaging with non-Muslim texts. Some voices express reservations about studying Greek philosophy, fearing that it might conflict with the teachings of Islam. However, Al-Kindi responds with his characteristic grace, arguing that the pursuit of knowledge is a universal human endeavor that transcends religious boundaries. He underscores the importance of preserving and building upon the intellectual heritage of all civilizations, seeing it as a way to honor the diversity and richness of human thought. Al-Kindi, drawing upon his deep understanding of both Islamic theology and Greek philosophy, articulates a compelling vision of how these two seemingly disparate traditions can coexist and complement each other. He suggests that the pursuit of wisdom and the search for truth are fundamental aspects of the human condition, and that these aspirations are not mutually exclusive, but can enrich and deepen our understanding of the divine. The conversation continues late into the night, the flickering lamplight casting long shadows as the students, inspired by Al-Kindi's insights, continue to explore the depths of Greek philosophy. They discuss topics ranging from ethics and metaphysics to logic and natural philosophy, each topic a new frontier in their intellectual journey. As the night deepens, the atmosphere in the room becomes charged with excitement and wonder. The students, realizing the significance of what they are learning, begin to see the world in a new light. They understand that the ideas they are exploring have shaped Western thought and continue to resonate deeply in contemporary discussions about the nature of reality, knowledge, and existence. The session ends not with a definitive set of answers, but with a shared commitment to keep asking questions, to keep seeking understanding, and to keep pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. The students, energized by their intellectual explorations, disperse into the night, their minds buzzing with the ideas they have encountered. They carry with them not just the teachings of Greek philosophers, but also the example of Al-Kindi himself, a scholar who dared to bridge intellectual traditions and who showed them the power of pursuing wisdom fearlessly. And yet, despite the brilliance of these ideas and the growing influence of Greco-Arabic philosophy, the world of the 9th century is not without its challenges. There are those who resist the engagement with non-Muslim thought, fearing contamination or the rejection of Islamic principles. However, Al-Kindi and his students remain steadfast in their pursuit of knowledge, demonstrating that intellectual growth and spiritual devotion are not mutually exclusive, but can coexist and reinforce one another. As the night winds down, Al-Kindi returns to his desk, the flickering lamplight revealing the rows upon rows of books that line the shelves around him. He takes up a scroll, his quill poised above it, ready to translate another fragment of Greek wisdom into Arabic. For Al-Kindi, this work of translation and interpretation is not just an academic exercise, but a labor of love and a commitment to the pursuit of truth. He understands that by making these ancient texts accessible to his fellow Muslims, he is opening up new realms of thought and enriching the intellectual life of his community. But the path of scholarship is rarely easy, Al-Kindi, as he delves deeper into the complexities of Greek philosophy, encounters not just linguistic challenges, but also conceptual barriers. The ideas of ancient Greece, though groundbreaking, were formulated in a different cultural context, and Al-Kindi must navigate. The task of conveying their meaning accurately while respecting the tenets of Islamic thought. Yet he perseveres, driven by his unwavering belief in the value of knowledge and his desire to share its bounty with others. His work of translation and interpretation becomes a microcosm of the broader cultural exchange taking place between the Islamic world and the West. Through his efforts, and those of his contemporaries, classical Greek texts that might have otherwise been lost are preserved and transmitted to Latin Europe, laying the groundwork for the Renaissance and the scientific revolution. Al-Kindi's story is a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is a universal human endeavor that can transcend religious and cultural boundaries. It's an enduring testament to the power of curiosity, the relentless human drive to comprehend the world around us, and the indelible impact one scholar's dedication can have on the course of history. As we reflect on Al-Kindi's legacy, let us also consider our own role in the ongoing pursuit of knowledge, like Al-Kindi. We too can approach the complexities of the world with a combination of reverence and curiosity, recognizing that each challenge we encounter holds the potential for deepening our understanding of ourselves and the universe we inhabit. What if I told you there is a man who has read all the books in the world? Might sound like the start of a fairy tale, but it's actually the story of one man's obsession with collecting every book ever written. And this man is still alive today. A recent survey found that an elderly man from Arizona named Sam has read 65,000 books, roughly one book per day since the age of 5. He started when he was young, and he continued throughout his adult life. But Sam is not the only one. A librarian from Wisconsin named Daron has also read every book. He has read about 100,000 titles, and his mission is to read all the remaining books in the world before he dies. So how do these men manage to read so many books? How much have they slept? How much food have they eaten? We will investigate these questions and more in today's episode of Fake It Till You Make It. In the 9th century AD, the Abbasid Caliphate was the wealthiest and most powerful state in the world. Its capital at Baghdad was the largest city on earth, home to nearly 1 million people. Here, in this golden age of Islam, there existed a group of elite scholars tasked with a seemingly impossible mission: read every book in the Greek language and translate them into Arabic. They called themselves the House of Wisdom, and their work would change the course of world history. The most prolific member of this group was a philosopher and polymath named Al-Kindi, also known as the philosopher of the Arabs. Like his colleagues, Al-Kindi had a formidable work ethic. Every morning he would rise before sunrise and immediately begin to read. He would read for hours on end without stopping, his eyes scanning the pages of ancient Greek texts with incredible speed. But Al-Kindi's approach to translation was methodical to a degree that would seem almost obsessive today. He would begin by reading the entire Greek text multiple times, making no attempt to translate, simply allowing the rhythm and structure of the original author's thought to settle in his mind. Only then would he begin the careful work of finding Arabic equivalents, testing different phrasings, seeking the words that would carry not just the meaning but the spirit of the original. It may seem obvious today that when you translate a text you should try to stay true to the original, but in the 9th century, this was a radical idea. Most translators simply converted texts into a different language without any concern for preserving the style or intent of the original. But for Al-Kindi, this was unacceptable. He believed that to translate properly, you must first understand completely. This required an intimate familiarity with both the source text and the target language, as well as an intuitive understanding of the culture and historical context of the original work. For instance, Aristotle's discussions of causation, fate, and free will required Al-Kindi to develop new Arabic, vocabulary for concepts that had never been systematically discussed in his language. He couldn't just invent words out of thin air. Each new term had to feel natural to Arabic speakers, while remaining true to the Greek concept. This required an understanding of both languages that went far beyond mere fluency. Once he had read the text multiple times and was confident he understood it completely, Al-Kindi would begin the slow process of translation. He would read a passage in Greek, then put down the book and try to recite it in Arabic without looking at his notes. If he could remember it perfectly, he would consider that a good sign. Then he would start to write. He would translate the text into the best Arabic he could manage, striving to preserve the original meaning and tone as much as possible. But even after he had completed his initial translation, Al-Kindi would not allow himself to rest easy. He would go back and forth between the original Greek and his own Arabic version, constantly comparing them and making sure that they matched perfectly. If he felt that something was lost in translation, he would spend hours trying to find the perfect words to convey the original meaning. But Al-Kindi's work was not confined to his desk. In fact, he believed that in order to truly understand a text, you had to let it roam free in your mind. So after several hours of translation, he would set aside his writing materials and simply think. He would pace slowly around his study or sit quietly in his small garden, allowing the ideas he'd been working with to settle and connect in his mind. He would think about the text he had translated that day, trying to imagine what it would have been like to have lived in the ancient Greek world and to have heard those ideas for the first time. He would ponder the connections between the text he was reading and the other texts he had studied in the past, searching for patterns and themes that ran through all of human history. When I hear people talk about productivity, they are always talking about doing more, working harder, and getting ahead. But Al-Kindi's approach to work was very different. He believed that in order to do your best work, you had to take time to rest and reflect. He knew that the most difficult philosophical concepts required time to be fully understood, and that you could unjust force yourself to be productive all the time. So he built in regular breaks into his workday. After several hours of intense focus, he would step away from his work and clear his mind. This allowed him to return to his studies refreshed and ready to learn. But Al-Kindi's approach to work was not just about taking breaks. It was also about understanding the value of doing nothing. He believed that some of the most important insights come when you least expect them, when you are relaxed and your mind is free to wander. So instead of trying to be productive all the time, Al-Kindi took time to enjoy the present moment, to appreciate the beauty of his surroundings, and to engage in activities that brought him joy. And when nothing came to mind, he didn't force it. He simply waited patiently for inspiration to strike. This approach to work may seem counterintuitive in our fast-paced, results-driven world, but Al-Kindi's approach was highly effective. He was able to make groundbreaking contributions to philosophy, medicine, mathematics, and many other fields. By taking time to rest and reflect, by embracing the power of doing nothing, Al-Kindi showed that it is possible to be both productive and balanced. Of course, Al-Kindi wasn't the only person working in the House of Wisdom. Every day, dozens of scholars would gather from all over the Islamic world to participate in the translation effort. These translators weren't just academics. They came from all walks of life, but they were all united by a common goal: to preserve and share the knowledge of ancient Greece. Some were motivated by religious convictions, believing that it was their duty to spread the word of God. Others were driven by a love of learning, eager to explore the ideas of the ancient world. And still others were motivated by more practical concerns, recognizing the political and economic benefits of controlling access to valuable knowledge. But whatever their motivations, these translators were bound by a strict code of ethics. Each translator was expected to bring their best work to the project, to collaborate effectively with their colleagues, and to remain humble in the face of new ideas. They knew that they were standing on the shoulders of giants, and that their work would be judged by the standards of the ancient Greeks. But despite the high stakes and the immense pressure to perform, the translators found ways to inject humor into their work. They made jokes about the quirks of the Greek language, shared stories about their personal lives, and debated the merits of different translation techniques. This camaraderie helped them to bond with their colleagues and made the long hours of work more bearable. But the social aspects of their work were just as demanding as the intellectual challenges. Al-Kindi and his fellow translators weren't working in a vacuum. They were part of a larger community of scholars, each contributing to the massive project of bringing Greek knowledge into the Islamic world. This meant regular consultations with colleagues, debates over terminology, and the careful coordination of translation projects to ensure consistency across different texts. These scholarly discussions could extend late into the evening as groups of translators worked together to solve particularly challenging conceptual problems. But the social aspects of their work were not limited to their colleagues. Al-Kindia and his friends often invited guests to their homes for dinner parties, where they would discuss the latest translation projects and debate the merits of different scholarly approaches. These social gatherings were an important part of the translation movement, providing a space for scholars to network and build alliances that would help them in their work. But this was also a dangerous game to play, because amidst the intrigue and politics of the Abbasid court, maintaining neutrality was a delicate balancing act. Sometimes it meant staying out of the way when powerful figures were at odds and avoiding controversial topics that could upset the ruling class. Other times it meant staying loyal to the House of Wisdom's mission and refusing to bow to the demands of those in power. Ultimately, the translators had to decide for themselves where to draw the line and how to balance the competing demands of scholarship, politics, and personal safety. The work of Al-Kindi and his fellow translators had a profound impact on the course of world history. By making Greek knowledge available in Arabic, they helped to preserve the classical texts of antiquity and make them accessible to future generations. They also played a key role in transmitting Greek scientific and philosophical ideas to the West, where they would later inspire the Renaissance and the scientific revolution. But their work was not without its challenges. They faced skepticism from those who doubted the value of Greek knowledge, and opposition from powerful figures who sought to control access to this valuable resource. Despite these challenges, the translators persevered. Driven by their love of learning and their desire to preserve the cultural heritage of the ancient world, their dedication and hard work paid off, and their legacy continues to inspire scholars and intellectuals today. It is easy to dismiss someone like Al-Kindi as merely a translator, a conduit between the Greeks and the Arabs. But to do so is to miss the point. Al-Kindi's relationship with the original Greek texts was almost mystical in its intensity. He would often speak of feeling a direct connection to philosophers who had died centuries before his birth. Through the patient work of translation, he experienced their thoughts as if they were engaged in direct conversation. This sense of communion with ancient wisdom drove him through the long hours of difficult work. But it also isolated him from his contemporaries, who didn't share his passion for Greek philosophy. To be sure, there were other Muslim scholars busily engaged in translating Greek texts. But Al-Kindi had a unique gift for languages and an unrivaled philosophical imagination. While others might labor over a single difficult book for years, Al-Kindi would breeze through several in a matter of months. At the same time, he was producing original philosophical works of his own and training students who would carry on his intellectual legacy. This story is one of many that illustrate the life and work of Al-Kindi, a nearly forgotten Muslim philosopher whose translations and scholarship laid the groundwork for centuries of philosophical inquiry in the Islamic world. Today, we remember him primarily for his pioneering work in logic, mathematics, and natural science. But his most important contribution was his translation and interpretation of Greek philosophical texts. The physical demands of Al-Kindi's work were substantial. Like you in your role as librarian, he spent countless hours hunched over manuscripts, straining his eyes to decipher faded text, cramping his hands with careful writing. But the intellectual demands were even more exhausting. Each translated passage required not just linguistic skill, but philosophical understanding. A good translation is more than just the substitution of words from one language into another. It requires an understanding of the original culture and the historical context in which the ideas were expressed. This is true for any translation, but it was especially true for Al-Kindi's work. He wasn't just translating words, he was bringing whole philosophical systems into the Arabic-speaking world. This demanded not only linguistic virtuosity, but an intimate knowledge of both Greek and Arabic philosophy. Al-Kindi had to think his way into the mind of each ancient author, understanding not just what they said, but why they said it, and how it connected to their larger philosophical project. This required a deep well of philosophical imagination, Consider the problem of translating the Greek concept of eros into Arabic. Eros is more than just a word. It's a philosophical category that encompasses the various forms of love and desire that motivate human beings. Al-Kindi might have decided to translate eros into a word that literally meant love or desire in Arabic. But such a simple translation would have risked trivializing the concept. After all, eros, in Greek philosophy, carried a certain weight and seriousness that a simple Arabic equivalent could uncapture. So instead, Al-Kindi would create what he called conceptual bridges. These were extended explanations that helped Arabic readers understand the intellectual context necessary to grasp the original idea. In the case of eros, this might have involved not just defining the term, but also explaining its historical development, its various manifestations, and its role in human psychology and society. Such explanations weren't simply footnotes, but carefully crafted essays that wove together the translated text with the cultural and philosophical background needed to make sense of it. This approach to translation was both brilliant and exhausting. To master a single philosophical concept in all its nuances and complexities took Al-Kindi days, or even weeks. And when he encountered a particularly thorny passage, he would often find himself locked in a kind of philosophical combat with the original author. But this struggle was what made his work so valuable. By wrestling with difficult concepts, Al-Kindi was able to produce translations that were not only accurate, but also illuminated the subtle shades of meaning that would have been lost in a more literal rendering. The loneliness of his work was something Al-Kindi rarely discussed, but clearly felt. He was creating a new form of Arabic philosophical literature, but this meant he often had no peers who could fully appreciate the subtlety of his accomplishments. His translations were so groundbreaking that few of his contemporaries had the background to evaluate their quality. He worked in a strange intellectual space between two worlds, fully at home in neither. Imagine yourself transported back to the year 802 AD. You find yourself in the bustling city of Baghdad, then the world's largest metropolis and a hub of intellectual activity. Al-Hakum, the second caliph of the Abbasid dynasty, rules over a vast empire that stretches from Spain to the borders of China. And in the heart of this cosmopolitan city lives a man named Abu Yusuf Yaqub bin Yashek Al-Kindi. Al-Kindi was born into a Persian family that had converted to Islam. His father, a judge, recognized his son's exceptional abilities and provided him with an education that combined Islamic theology and Aristotelian philosophy, which had recently been introduced to the Muslim world through the efforts of earlier translators. By the age of 24, Al-Kindi was fluent in several languages, including Arabic, Greek, Hebrew, and Syriac. He also had an intimate knowledge of Aristotelian philosophy and its key concepts. But while many of his contemporaries viewed Greek philosophy with suspicion, seeing it as a potential threat to Islamic teachings, Al-Kindi saw the potential for harmony between the two traditions. For Al-Kindi, philosophy was not merely a set of abstract ideas or a means of acquiring worldly power, but a path to understanding the nature of reality and humanity's place within it. In an age when the Islamic world was often characterized by intellectual rigidity and hostility towards non-Muslim perspectives, Al-Kindi dared to embrace Aristotelian philosophy, recognizing its value and seeking to integrate it with Islamic thought. In fact, he came to believe that the Quran itself contained echoes of Aristotelian ideas, and that the Prophet Muhammad had anticipated some of Aristotle's philosophical insights. This audacious perspective would shape the trajectory of his life, and ultimately leave an indelible mark on the history of human knowledge. Now let's get into today's video. One day, Caliph Al-Mun ibn Harun, intrigued by rumors of Al-Kindi's unique views, summoned him to the royal court. The Caliph presented Al-Kindi with a challenge. Translate the works of Aristotle into Arabic and demonstrate how they might complement Islamic theology. Impressed by Al-Kindi's linguistic abilities and philosophical training, the Caliph granted him access to the royal library, one of the world's most extensive collections of Greek texts. With the support of the Caliph, Al-Kindi embarked on a monumental project that would define his legacy and reshape the intellectual landscape of the Islamic world. In the quiet hours before dawn, when Baghdad slept and the only sound was the scratch of reed pen against parchment, Al-Kindi pursued his extraordinary project of intellectual bridge building. His task was not merely a matter of linguistic dexterity, but a profound philosophical and cultural undertaking. Each word, each concept, each argument he rendered into Arabic carried the weight of centuries of intellectual tradition. He worked tirelessly, driven by a vision of human knowledge as a shared inheritance that transcended the boundaries of culture and time. As the years passed, al-Kindi's reputation as a translator and philosopher grew. Scholars from across the Islamic world flocked to Baghdad to study under him, and his students would go on to establish schools of Aristotelian philosophy throughout the empire. Yet despite his growing fame, al-Kindi remained dedicated to his daily routine, rising before dawn to translate in the quiet solitude of his study. But what exactly did al-Kindi's work entail? What challenges did he face, and what impact did his translations have on the course of intellectual history? To begin with, it's essential to understand the state of knowledge in the Islamic world at the time. The rapid expansion of Muslim territories had brought diverse cultures and intellectual traditions into contact, but communication between them was often hindered by linguistic barriers. While many scholars were content to transmit existing texts, al-Kindi sought to break new ground, building upon the work of previous translators by producing more accurate and nuanced renderings of Aristotelian texts. His meticulous approach involved not merely converting Greek words into Arabic equivalents, but grappling with the underlying concepts and refining the terminology to capture their essence in the target language. For instance, al-Kindi's translation of the term substance led him to coin the Arabic phrase hakika, which denoted not just the thing's physical reality, but its underlying essence. Such attention to detail not only enhanced the accuracy of his translations, but also established conventions that influenced Arabic philosophical language for generations. Moreover, al-Kindi's work went beyond mere translation. He wrote original treatises on a wide range of topics, from logic and metaphysics to ethics and political philosophy. In these works, he synthesized Aristotelian ideas with Islamic theology, demonstrating the compatibility between the two traditions. One of his most influential books, The Incoherence of the Philosophers, addressed the criticisms of Aristotelianism leveled by his contemporary Al-Farabi, and provided a systematic refutation of his arguments. Throughout his career, al-Kindi faced opposition from those who viewed Greek philosophy as a threat to Islamic teachings. However, his commitment to his project never wavered. In fact, he continued to translate and write until his death in about 873, leaving behind a body of work that would shape the course of Islamic intellectual history. So what was the impact of al-Kindi's work? How did his translations and philosophical treatises shape the intellectual landscape of his time and beyond? First and foremost, al-Kindi's translations made the works of Aristotle and other Greek philosophers accessible to a wider audience. They served as the foundation for centuries of Islamic philosophical development and influenced the great Muslim thinkers who came after him, such as Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, and Al-Ghazali. Moreover, his careful attention to terminology and his ability to convey the nuances of Greek thought in Arabic established conventions that shaped Arabic philosophical language for generations. However, the significance of al-Kindi's work extends beyond the realm of translation. His philosophical treatises, in which he integrated Aristotelian ideas with Islamic theology, demonstrated the compatibility between the two traditions and paved the way for a more inclusive and tolerant approach to intellectual inquiry. By highlighting the commonalities between Greek and Islamic thought, al-Kindi helped to break down barriers and foster greater understanding between different cultures. His impact can also be seen in the establishment of schools of Aristotelian philosophy throughout the Islamic world, which became centers of intellectual activity and the training ground for generations of scholars. In these schools, al-Kindi's teachings were preserved and transmitted, ensuring that his legacy would endure long after his death. Furthermore, al-Kindi's work had an indirect but profound impact on the transmission of Greek knowledge to the West. While his translations were not directly influential in medieval Europe, they played a vital role in preserving and transmitting Greek texts that would later be rediscovered during the Renaissance. The manuscripts that al-Kindi worked on and the scholarly apparatus he developed contributed to the preservation of ancient Greek thought and made it possible for European scholars to access these texts centuries later. Yet despite the magnitude of his contributions, al-Kindi's name is not as widely recognized as some of his contemporaries. While figures like Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina have achieved greater renown, It was Al-Kindi who laid the groundwork for their work, and whose translations and philosophical treatises served as the foundation for centuries of Islamic philosophical development. His quiet dedication and meticulous attention to detail may not have garnered widespread public attention during his lifetime, but the ripples of his work continued to be felt today. In the tapestry of human knowledge, Al-Kindi's contributions stand out as threads of wisdom that connect seemingly disparate cultures and time periods. His work reminds us that intellectual progress often occurs in quiet, unassuming ways, and that the pursuit of knowledge is a shared endeavor that transcends the boundaries of culture and time. So the next time you encounter a complex philosophical concept or marvel at the beauty of a well-crafted argument, take a moment to appreciate the quiet heroes of scholarship, whose work made it possible for you to encounter these ideas and build upon them. For it is through their dedication and perseverance that we are able to stand on the shoulders of giants and contribute to the ongoing dialogue of human understanding. And that brings us back to the beginning of this story, to the quiet hours before dawn in Baghdad when Al-Kindi pursued his extraordinary project of intellectual bridge building. His story is a testament to the power of human curiosity and the transformative potential of knowledge. It is a reminder that the pursuit of wisdom can bring together seemingly disparate cultures, and that the quest for understanding is a journey that transcends the boundaries of time. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support our work, please consider becoming a patron. Your support will help us continue to bring these stories to life and share them with the world. Until next time, may your own curiosity lead you to new discoveries, and may you find joy in the pursuit of knowledge. Thank you. The influx of such a vast amount of literature so alien to Baghdad created a practical problem, however. Most scholars working in the House of Wisdom knew Arabic, but their sources were often written in Persian, Greek, Sanskrit, or other languages. Thus, the most critical component of the institution arose naturally enough out of necessity: translation. This is why the House of Wisdom is often referred to as Dar al-Turtib, the House of Translation, during its peak in the 9th and 10th centuries. More than 500 translators, many of them foreigners, worked here, producing about 60 works per day. They translated scientific treatises, philosophical inquiries, medical texts, literary masterpieces, and even jokes. Everything that crossed the threshold of the House of Wisdom had the potential to enrich the sum total of human knowledge, regardless of its culture of origin. One might scoff at the thought of translating jokes, but they often provide a window into a culture that no amount of history books or treaties ever could. For example, the Kitab, Al-Shuga, or Book of Jokes. Compiled by a translator named Hanayn ibn Ishaq, provides an invaluable glimpse into the humor of 8th century Byzantium. Imagine how much more insight we might gain if every single joke told during that era was painstakingly recorded and translated for posterity. But while we may laugh at the jests of our ancestors, the translators of Baghdad took their work very seriously. They understood that each text was a product of its time and place, and they aimed to reproduce that essence as faithfully as possible. In the words of one scholar, "We have been ordered to translate word for word, so if you find in the original a word which cannot be translated without altering its meaning or is too obscure to be understood, you are to leave it untranslated." Such dedication led to some interesting results, particularly when dealing with words or concepts absent in the target language. Faced with the need to convey unfamiliar ideas, translators would coin new terms or adapt existing ones. For example, the concept of zero, a number that represented the absence of quantity, posed a significant challenge for the Arabic-speaking world. Indian mathematicians had used the idea of zero for centuries, but it was still unknown in Arabic. So the translator Hanayn ibn Ishaq chose to represent the concept with a combination of two existing Arabic words, sifr and madad, literally meaning nothingness, and extended, which phonetically resembled the Sanskrit word for zero. This innovation eventually made its way into Latin translations and then into the Western world, where it took several centuries to catch on. But without the work of these translators, the concept of zero might have remained forever alien to Western mathematics. The process of translating so much foreign knowledge also led to another surprising outcome. As scholars worked side by side, sharing the results of their research, new ideas began to take root in Baghdad. Greek philosophers discussed theology with Muslim theologians, Indian astronomers debated techniques with Persian astrologers, and Byzantine scientists exchanged ideas with Arab physicians. At the House of Wisdom, difference wasn't just tolerated, it was encouraged. This fusion of cultures didn't stop at the exchange of ideas. Social customs and even cuisine became a part of daily life. Foreign scholars were invited to share meals with colleagues from distant lands. They learned Arabic proverbs and sayings, just as their Muslim colleagues studied Persian poetry and Hindustani music. To facilitate these interactions, Caliph Al-Amin even established a guest house near the House of Wisdom, where visiting scholars could stay comfortably while carrying out their research. The House of Wisdom wasn't just a place of work, it was a microcosm of the world, a place where people came together to learn, to debate, and to live. Unfortunately, the story of the House of Wisdom is not a happy one. Like many great institutions, it did not stand the test of time. The long decline of the Abbasid Caliphate began in earnest in the mid-9th century, while the eastern caliphates of the Abbasids continued to flourish until the Mongol invasion of the 13th century. The political authority of Baghdad waned, beginning under Al-Ma'mun's successors. The caliphs became increasingly detached from affairs at the House of Wisdom and eventually ceased to care about its fate. By the end of the 10th century, the library was little more than a shadow of its former self, its collection dispersed, its translators gone. The fall of the House of Wisdom is a stark reminder of the fragility of cultural institutions, even those seemingly destined to endure. Many factors contributed to its demise. Internal squabbles within the caliphate, the rise of independent states across the Islamic world, and the growing threat of external invaders all weakened Baghdad's ability to support such an ambitious project. Additionally, changing attitudes towards classical learning, especially among religious authorities, gradually eroded the value placed upon preserving and translating secular knowledge. As the library's patrons and supporters lost interest, its resources were depleted and its influence waned. Nevertheless, despite its tragic end, the legacy of the House of Wisdom endured. Throughout history, the stories of its dedicated scholars, its vast collection, and its pioneering methods of translation continue to inspire awe and wonder. Though its existence was relatively brief, the impact of this institution transcended its short lifespan. In fact, the House of Wisdom serves as a potent symbol of humanity's capacity for intellectual achievement and cultural exchange. Even after its demise, its spirit lived on in the works of its scholars and the seeds of knowledge it planted across the world. Its story reminds us of the power of ideas to transcend boundaries and the importance of preserving cultural heritage for future generations. Although the House of Wisdom ultimately succumbed to the pressures of its time, its story continues to resonate with us today. When we think of ancient libraries, our minds often conjure up images of dusty shelves, silent readers, and the musty smell of aging paper. But the House of Wisdom challenges this conventional image. Here, amidst the rows of manuscripts, an electric energy crackled. Scholars from diverse backgrounds engaged in lively debates, sharing their discoveries and challenging one another's ideas. Translators toiled over ancient texts, breathing new life into forgotten knowledge by making it accessible in different languages. It was a place of intense intellectual activity, a vibrant hub of human curiosity and achievement. The true magic of the House of Wisdom lay in the fusion of cultures that occurred within its walls. Scholars from across the known world found common ground, forging friendships and exchanging not just ideas, but customs, stories, and ways of thinking. This cultural melting pot gave birth to new ideas and perspectives, pushing the boundaries of knowledge beyond what any one culture could have achieved alone. In the heart of medieval Baghdad, the House of Wisdom stood as a beacon of enlightenment, demonstrating the limitless potential of the human mind when cultures come together in pursuit of knowledge. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to tune in to more episodes where we bring you the craziest facts from human history. The House of Wisdom was not a place, it was an idea. It was the concept of an ideal institution where knowledge from around the world could come together, be preserved, and shared. And while we today associate this concept with our modern universities, at the time it was revolutionary. So let's explore what life inside the House of Wisdom would have been like. What did it look like? What was it actually used for? What kind of people came here and what did they get up to? Let's imagine you're walking through the manuscript halls during the institution's golden period. The scale would have been breathtaking, not the cramped corridors of a monastery scriptorium, but vast spaces designed to accommodate hundreds of scholars working simultaneously. Imagine high ceilings with intricate geometric patterns painted on them to tell the time during prayer times. Sunlight streams through large windows onto long tables arranged to catch the best natural light. At each table sit readers, not hunched over in isolation, but positioned so that each person's work wouldn't disturb their neighbors. In fact, this layout facilitated quiet conversation across the table, allowing for immediate feedback and discussion. You might think the room smells like books, but the aroma isn't quite that simple. Old parchment has a distinct odor, as do various inks. There's also the subtle scent of aromatics used to repel insects that threaten the manuscripts. But the most intriguing aspect of this smell is the commingling of aromas from different cultures. The House of Wisdom wasn't just a collection of books. It was a melting pot of ideas. Think about the leather-bound volumes from European monasteries, the fragrant spice trade imports from the East, and the distinctive smell of paper made from hemp in Central Asia. All these aromas converge to create a unique olfactory experience, a testament to the institution's role as a global hub of scholarship. As you move through the halls, you notice a painting of the 7 liberal arts, these subjects: grammar, logic, rhetoric, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music, represent the core curriculum of a classical education. They're not merely decorative. They signify the purpose of the house, which was to preserve, organize, and disseminate knowledge. Each shelf holds not just books, but carefully selected specimens of scholarship, reflecting a remarkably sophisticated understanding of how information should be categorized and accessed. Works aren't just arranged by language or subject, but by a complex system that takes into account the relationships between different fields of knowledge. For example, medical texts are placed near philosophical works that deal with the nature of the human body. Astronomical treatises are shelved, alongside mathematical works that provide the computational tools necessary for celestial calculations. This level of sophistication in information organization is a testament to the Abbasid Caliphate's golden age, where the House of Wisdom flourished. There's more than just books here. Parchment scrolls are unrolled, and maps, diagrams, and musical scores are spread out on tables. The very design of the space encourages interaction, study, and the cross-pollination of ideas. You hear the murmur of voices engaged in lively discussions, scratching of quills as scholars make notes, and the rustle of pages as others search for the perfect passage to quote. In the center of the room stands a fountain, its water cascading down into a basin below. Not just a decorative feature, the fountain serves a practical purpose. It's a source of fresh water used for washing the hands and face before and after meals. Cleanliness is highly valued in this institution. Scholars come from all over the known world and bring with them different customs and habits. To maintain order and harmony, everyone abides by the same standards of personal hygiene, ensuring that no one's presence is deemed too offensive. The House of Wisdom wasn't just a place to store books. It was a vibrant hub of activity where ideas were exchanged, debated, and built upon. It was also a place of hospitality, where scholars from around the world felt welcome and respected regardless of their background or beliefs. To fully understand what life inside the House of Wisdom was like, we need to talk about what went on there. What were the scholars doing? The beating heart of the House of Wisdom was its translation workshops. Here, teams of scholars would gather to convert texts from one language to another, ensuring that the nuances of meaning and expression were captured in the process. It was an incredibly labor-intensive process, akin to what we today might call project management. Each translation project was a small-scale operation involving several key players. First was the native speaker of the source language. Their role was crucial as they ensured that the text was read accurately and that its meaning was properly conveyed. They were responsible for understanding the target language S philosophical vocabulary and ensuring that the text S meaning was properly translated. Finally, there was the subject specialist, who could be anyone from a mathematician to an astronomer or physician. Their role was to guarantee the accuracy of technical terms and concepts, making sure that the translation not only made sense philosophically, but also in the context of their field. These translation projects weren't merely academic exercises. They were a critical part of the House of Wisdom's mission to preserve and disseminate knowledge. By translating texts from Greek, Persian, Indian, and other languages into Arabic, the House of Wisdom ensured that important works were accessible to a wider audience. This process wasn't without its challenges. Scholars sometimes disagreed on the best way to render a phrase or concept. During these debates, tempers could flare and discussions could become heated. However, the commitment to reasoned discourse and mutual respect usually prevailed over sectarian divisions. What made the House of Wisdom truly remarkable was the coordination and efficiency with which these projects were carried out. Scholars worked in groups, each person contributing their particular expertise to the collective effort. This collaborative approach allowed for a division of labor that not only sped up the process of translation, but also ensured a higher quality of work. It was a systematic and methodical approach to knowledge acquisition and preservation that had a profound impact on the course of intellectual history. The daily rhythm of work within the House of Wisdom followed patterns that balanced intense intellectual focus with the human need for reflection and discussion. The morning hours were typically devoted to individual study and translation work, when minds were fresh and best able to handle complex material. After the midday prayer, scholars would often return to their work, this time in collaboration with their peers. It was during these hours that groups of scholars would gather to debate difficult passages, test translation choices, and share insights from their specialized fields. Evenings were often reserved for copying and administrative work, tasks that required care and attention, but less creative energy. Now let's talk about the people who made all this possible. The House of Wisdom attracted scholars from all corners of the known world, creating a community of intellectuals unlike any seen before or since. People came from Byzantium, Persia, India, and distant Spain, each bringing their own intellectual traditions and methodological approaches. They were united by a common desire to preserve and advance knowledge, but their differences often led to heated debates. For example, imagine a group of scholars discussing a particularly knotty problem in geometry. One scholar might approach the problem using the axiomatic method of Euclid, while another might employ the more intuitive geometric algebra of his own tradition. Such debates were not uncommon in the House of Wisdom. In fact, they were encouraged. Disagreement was seen as a means of arriving at a deeper, more nuanced understanding of a subject. The commitment to reasoned discourse and evidence-based arguments was paramount. Personal biases and opinions were set aside in favor of logic and evidence. It was a commitment to the pursuit of truth for its own sake, regardless of the personal or political implications. However, these debates didn't just revolve around technical problems or theoretical concepts. They extended to broader questions about the nature of knowledge itself. The scholars in the House of Wisdom were not just technicians, they were philosophers. They grappled with fundamental questions about the limits of human understanding, the reliability of sensory experience, and the relationship between faith and reason. These were not easy questions to answer, and the journey towards finding or even formulating an answer was fraught with challenges. But it was precisely this commitment to grappling with the most fundamental questions about the nature of reality that made the House of Wisdom such a special place. It was a place where minds from different cultures, backgrounds, and perspectives came together to explore the unknown. Driven by a shared curiosity and a desire to understand the world around them, the House of Wisdom stands as a testament to the power of human curiosity and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. Its influence on the course of intellectual history cannot be overstated. From preserving ancient texts to fostering groundbreaking research, this institution played a pivotal role in shaping the world we live in today. What would you put in the greatest library of the ancient world? Be some old scrolls by Aristotle or Plato? Maybe a dusty copy of Euclid's Elements? How about an early edition of Ptolemy's Geography, or the Almagest, the star catalog of the greatest astronomer of antiquity? What if I told you that someone actually did? And I'm not talking about the Library of Alexandria. I'm talking about a little-known institution called the House of Wisdom. Welcome to my channel. Let's dive into history's greatest lost library, the House of Wisdom, also called Dar al-Hekmah, Dar al-Kitab, or the Institute of Knowledge, was an intellectual institution in Baghdad, Iraq during the 8th to 10th century CE. It's been called the first modern library, the first modern university, and even the first modern research institute. At the height of its power, it boasted a collection of hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, perhaps even approaching 1 million, making it the largest library in the ancient world. Its influence would eventually extend all the way to Europe, playing a vital role in the medieval and Renaissance. Yet few people have ever heard of it today. But how did it happen? Well, let's go back to the beginning. The creation of the House of Wisdom is usually dated to 750 CE, when the Abbasid Caliph, Abbas ibn al-Mahdi, established a center for translating scientific texts from Greek to Arabic. The endeavor was placed under the supervision of his vizier Khalid ibn Yazid al-Habib al-Kurdi, otherwise known as Fustus. As the enterprise grew, it became increasingly multidisciplinary. In 762, Harun al-Rashid, the successor of Abbas, expanded the scope of the project to include philosophy and literature. 5 years later, his son al-Munib bin Harun established the so-called Bureau of Translators in Baghdad. This marked the official birth of the House of Wisdom as an independent institution. Over the next 2 centuries, the library would grow exponentially, amassing an unparalleled collection of scientific and philosophical works. The institution employed a professional staff of scribes to copy manuscripts and coordinate with other intellectual centers like those in Cordoba, Cairo, and Toulouse to obtain missing texts. The effort was Herculean, but it quickly paid off. The House of Wisdom became famous throughout the Islamic world and even in Europe for its unparalleled collection of ancient texts. Contemporary sources describe the library as a place of marvels. One traveler reported being shown a sundial that could follow the sun's path across the sky without assistance, and maps that showed the geography of the world in stunning detail. These wonders, however, were just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. Exactly what the House of Wisdom contained has tantalized historians for centuries. Contemporary accounts mention astronomical instruments of unprecedented sophistication, maps that showed geographical knowledge far exceeding what was commonly available, mathematical texts that wouldn't be rediscovered in Europe for centuries. But the specific details remain tantalizingly vague. We know that the library contained works by Aristotle, Plato, Ptolemy, and other classical authors, but we can only guess at the full scope of the collection. The reason for this gap in our knowledge is that the House of Wisdom didn't survive in the way that, say, Herculaneum did. When the city was destroyed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, the library's fate was much less dramatic. Unlike the Library of Alexandria, which was methodically looted and burned over several decades, the House of Wisdom was allowed to fade away gradually, quietly withering under a combination of political neglect and sectarian conflicts. In fact, it continued operating in some form until the 13th century. Unfortunately, no comprehensive record of its collection was ever compiled. The closest thing we have is a letter written in 834 by Al-Men ibn Harun to a fellow caliph asking for assistance in locating a single manuscript. The letter mentions everything from astronomical treatises to Homeric epics. But since it was clearly meant to request individual books rather than an entire library, it does little to illuminate the scope of the collection. So what exactly was the House of Wisdom like? What kind of organization was responsible for assembling such an extraordinary array of texts? Scholars have long marveled at the astonishingly modern approach to knowledge preservation adopted by the House of Wisdom. Contrary to the image of a stuffy, extensive institution that jealously hoarded priceless artifacts, the House of Wisdom saw itself as a clearinghouse for the diffusion of knowledge. Rather than simply collecting manuscripts, the House of Wisdom sought to make them widely available. Once a text was acquired, copies were made and sent to scholars around the Islamic world. In particular, the institution supported a network of local libraries in cities like Basra, Kufa, and Damascus. This institutionalized the practice of lending books, which had previously been somewhat informal affair among private collectors. This system of decentralized scholarship had several significant advantages. First, it allowed scholars to specialize in a particular field without having to acquire every book in existence on that topic. Second, it encouraged competition among scholars in different cities, each trying to produce the best commentary on a given text. Third, it provided a safety valve for controversial ideas. If a particularly explosive text caused trouble in one city, it could simply be transferred somewhere else. This system not only spread knowledge more widely, but also helped mitigate the risk of losing important texts. The collection policy of the House of Wisdom was remarkably inclusive. While it certainly prioritized scientific and philosophical texts, it did not limit itself to them. Works on law, medicine, history, poetry, and theology were also acquired. In fact, the library probably contained the largest collection of theological books in the whole of Islam. This ecumenical approach extended to non-Muslim texts as well. The House of Wisdom translated and preserved a wide range of non-Arabic literature, including Persian, Greek, Hebrew, and even Chinese. This last point requires some unpacking as it touches on a common misconception about the origins of medieval Islamic scholarship. The idea that Islamic scholars only translated Greek and that they somehow left original scholarship to the pagans is utterly false. A significant number of medieval Islamic scholars pursued original research in astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and other fields. Moreover, they often built directly on the work of their Greek predecessors. To give just one example, the astronomer Al-Battani not only translated Ptolemy's Almagest, he also made significant improvements to the Almagest, compiling new star positions and correcting errors in Ptolemy's astronomical calculations. The House of Wisdom was not merely a passive repository of foreign texts, but an active center of research. In fact, the scholars who worked within the House of Wisdom developed research methods that would unseem out of place in a modern university. They maintained detailed bibliographies, created cross-reference systems that allowed researchers to track ideas across different texts, established citation conventions that gave credit to previous scholars. Much of their work was collaborative, requiring sophisticated project management and coordination to keep track of multiple authors working on different parts of the same text. This was especially true of the translation projects, which often involved scholars from different disciplines working together. The House of Wisdom pioneered this interdisciplinary approach, which became a hallmark of medieval Islamic scholarship. The House of Wisdom did not enjoy unlimited resources, and eventually the cost of maintaining such an enormous library proved prohibitive. As a result, the House of Wisdom began contracting in the 10th century. Several factors contributed to its decline. For one thing, the Abbasid Caliphate, which had ruled much of the Islamic world since the 8th century, was becoming increasingly fragmented. Political authority was being drained away by ambitious regional governors and the House of Wisdom, with its pan-Islamic outlook, came to be seen as a suspect institution. Furthermore, sectarian conflicts between Sunni and Shia Muslims were intensifying, and the House of Wisdom's commitment to theological pluralism made it vulnerable to accusations of heresy. Finally, the rise of more orthodox Islamic scholarship created suspicion about the value of translating Greek philosophical texts. The upshot was that the House of Wisdom received less and less support from the Abbasid caliphs, and eventually found itself dependent on private donations, which were notoriously unreliable. By the 12th century, the House of Wisdom had already lost much of its influence and vitality. The story usually told about the institution's final destruction is dramatic, but historically questionable. The story goes that in 1258, when the Mongols sacked Baghdad, they threw the library's books into the Tigris River, turning the water black with ink for days. This image has captured historical imagination for centuries, but contemporary accounts suggest a more mundane reality. The Mongols, practical conquerors, were unlikely to destroy valuable books, when there was every chance they might need them in the future. More likely, the House of Wisdom was dispersed, allowing its precious contents to drift away into private collections or be lost altogether. And that is why the House of Wisdom is still a mystery. No doubt the answer lies hidden somewhere in the archives of Istanbul or Madrid, waiting for someone to piece together the fragments. I just hope that someday we can recover the full story of this remarkable institution. It's hard to overstate the importance of the House of Wisdom for medieval scholarship. Its emphasis on research, its commitment to ecumenical scholarship, and its pioneering of interdisciplinary studies profoundly shaped medieval Islamic scholarship. Furthermore, the House of Wisdom played a crucial role in transmitting ancient knowledge to Latin Europe during the medieval period. Hundreds of Greek and Latin manuscripts that survived the collapse of the Western Roman Empire were lost to subsequent generations in the West. Had it not been for the efforts of Muslim scholars at the House of Wisdom, these works might have been irretrievably lost. As it was, many of them survived only because Muslim scholars preserved them. Ultimately, the legacy of the House of Wisdom is one of enduring relevance. Its story reminds us that cultural achievements are rarely appreciated in their own time, and that the pursuit of knowledge knows no bounds. In 1258, the House of Wisdom, the greatest library of its age, was burned to the ground. What made the loss of the House of Wisdom so particularly poignant was the knowledge that disappeared with it. Unique manuscripts that existed nowhere else, innovative research methods that took centuries to redevelop, and a collaborative approach to scholarship that wouldn't be seen again until the establishment of modern universities. The institution represented a model of international, intellectual cooperation that was far ahead of its time. But the destruction of the House of Wisdom wasn't the end of the story. The detective work of reconstructing what was lost continues today. Scholars comb through medieval Arabic texts, looking for references to works that were housed in the House of Wisdom. Sometimes a casual quotation or brief mention provides the only evidence that a particular text ever existed. Occasionally, a manuscript surfaces in a private collection or a distant library, bearing the notation that identifies it as having been copied from an original held in Baghdad centuries ago. The House of Wisdom wasn't just a repository of books. It was an intellectual center where scholars gathered to study, debate, and build on each other's ideas. When it was at the height of its power, roughly between 830 and 930 CE, during the Abbasid Caliphate, the institution boasted an astonishing range of disciplines, from astronomy and alchemy to geography and poetry. These fields weren't confined to separate departments, but overlapped in unexpected ways. A physician might also be a mathematician and philosopher. An astronomer might write poetry and practice law. This intellectual flexibility was accommodated by the structure of the House of Wisdom, which didn't have rigid departmental boundaries. Instead, scholars pursued their interests freely, collaborating with colleagues from across disciplinary boundaries. This approach allowed for the kind of creative thinking that doesn't fit neatly into modern academic categories. The House of Wisdom was also remarkably inclusive, attracting scholars from all over the known world. Muslims, Christians, and Jews worked side by side, sharing ideas and building on each other's work. The institution's commitment to free inquiry and open exchange made it a haven for scholars who might have been persecuted elsewhere for their religious beliefs or intellectual pursuits. But this openness also made the House of Wisdom a target. As sectarian violence increased in the late Abbasid period, the library and its scholars were caught in the crossfire. In 1258, when the Mongols sacked Baghdad, the House of Wisdom was burned to the ground. The loss of the House of Wisdom was a devastating blow to the world of scholarship. But the destruction of this great institution wasn't the end of the story. The scholars who worked there carried its methods and intellectual approaches to other cities, establishing similar institutions that continued its work. The translation movement that began in Baghdad spread throughout the Islamic world, creating a network of intellectual centers that maintained communication and shared resources across vast distances. And though none of these institutions would match the scope and impact of the House of Wisdom, they collectively kept its spirit alive. Today, scholars around the world continue to uncover the lost works of the House of Wisdom, piecing together the history of this extraordinary institution, one fragment at a time. But our understanding of the House of Wisdom is incomplete without an appreciation for the intellectual world in which it flourished. We tend to think of knowledge as divided into discrete disciplines, each with its own set of methods and goals. This way of thinking has its roots in the Enlightenment, when reason and rationality were highly prized and the natural sciences began to develop their own specialized vocabularies and techniques. But the boundaries between different fields of knowledge weren't always so rigid. In fact, for much of intellectual history, scholars routinely worked in what we would consider disparate disciplines. The House of Wisdom thrived in this environment, bringing together scholars from different backgrounds and encouraging them to share their ideas and methods. This approach to scholarship was so radical that it has only become common in our own time, with the rise of interdisciplinary studies and collaborative research. The scholars of the House of Wisdom were centuries ahead of their time in recognizing the value of diversity and the importance of breaking down the barriers between different fields of knowledge. The House of Wisdom also reminds us that knowledge is a collaborative enterprise. The scholars who worked there didn't see themselves as isolated individuals, but as part of a larger community of scholars working toward a common goal. They shared their resources, exchanged ideas, and built on each other's work. This spirit of collaboration is essential to the advancement of knowledge, and it's something that we need to remember in our own time. The legacy of the House of Wisdom lives on in the manuscripts that survive, scattered across libraries throughout the world. In the National in Paris, the British Library in London, the Vatican Library in Rome, and dozens of other institutions, researchers still encounter texts that bear the marks of having been copied or translated within the walls of that legendary institution. Surviving manuscript represents both a small victory against the forces of time and loss, and a reminder of how much has been irretrievably lost.
In the private quarters of the Abbasid Palace in Baghdad, where power and learning intertwined in ways that would seem almost unimaginable today, there existed spaces designed for a very different kind of royal leisure. While European monarchs of the same era might spend their private hours hunting or feasting, the caliphs of the Islamic Golden Age often retreated to reading rooms that represented the pinnacle of intellectual luxury. Tonight, let us step into these serene chambers, where the most powerful rulers of their age found respite not in worldly pleasures, but in the quiet contemplation of books. Picture yourself approaching the caliph's private library through a series of increasingly tranquil courtyards. Each garden space was designed to gradually separate the reader from the concerns of governance and worldly affairs. The first courtyard might still echo with the distant sounds of administrative business, the measured footsteps of ministers, the soft conversations of advisors, the rustle of official documents. But as you moved deeper into the complex, these sounds faded, replaced by the gentle splash of fountains and the whisper of wind through carefully tended trees. The final courtyard before the reading room itself was a masterpiece of environmental design. Here, Islamic garden architects had created a space that engaged all the senses in preparation for intellectual work. Orange and lemon trees provided a subtle, refreshing fragrance that was believed to stimulate mental clarity. The mathematical precision of the garden's geometric patterns created a visual harmony that calmed the mind, while reflecting the underlying order that Islamic thinkers saw in all creation. Water flowed in carefully calculated channels that produced a sound both soothing and rhythmic, like a natural metronome that encouraged focused thought. The reading room itself challenged every assumption about royal ostentation. Instead of the gilded furniture and elaborate decorations that filled the public areas of the palace, the caliph's private library emphasized simplicity and functionality. The floors were covered with the finest carpets, but their patterns were subtle and geometrically regular. designed to please the eye without creating distraction. The walls were lined with built-in shelves, their wood polished to a warm glow, but left unadorned with precious metals or jewels that might catch the light and draw attention from the books. The furniture in these royal reading spaces reflected a sophisticated understanding of how physical comfort supported intellectual work. Low tables were positioned at precise heights to allow comfortable reading while reclining on cushions. These weren't simply decorative pillows, but carefully designed supports that allowed the reader to maintain proper posture during long periods of study. The cushions themselves were filled with materials chosen for their ability to maintain shape, while providing support a combination of down and carefully prepared plant fibers that created seating both luxurious and practical. Lighting in the caliph's reading room was managed with the same attention to detail that characterized Islamic architectural achievement. During daylight hours, the room received illumination through a series of carefully positioned windows that had been designed to provide even, gentle light without creating glare or harsh shadows. The windows themselves were often fitted with screens of pierced marble or carved wood that filtered the light while creating patterns that added visual interest without distraction. The evening lighting system was even more sophisticated. Rather than relying on the smoky torches or crude candles that illuminated most medieval interiors, the caliph's reading room used a network of oil lamps that had been designed specifically for scholarly work. These lamps burned refined oils that produced minimal smoke, and their design focused light precisely where it was needed, while keeping the reader's eyes in relative shadow to prevent strain. The fuel for these lamps was often scented with subtle aromatics that enhanced the reading experience without overwhelming the senses. The book collection in the caliph's private library represented the apex of medieval manuscript culture. These weren't simply functional texts, but objects of extraordinary beauty that elevated the reading experience to an aesthetic as well as intellectual level. The bindings were crafted from the finest leathers, often dyed in deep, rich colors and tooled with geometric patterns that reflected the mathematical interests of Islamic scholars. The pages within were made from the highest quality parchment or paper, chosen for their ability to accept ink cleanly and age gracefully. But it was the calligraphy that truly set these royal manuscripts apart. The Arabic script in these books was executed by master calligraphers who spent years perfecting their craft. Each page was a work of art, with the text arranged in harmonious proportions that made reading a visual pleasure as well as an intellectual exercise. The letters flowed with a rhythm that seemed to mirror the cadence of spoken Arabic, creating manuscripts that were meant to be read aloud as much as studied silently. The daily routine of a scholarly caliph followed patterns that would surprise modern readers. Rather than beginning the day with military briefings or economic reports, rulers like Al-Mamun or Al-Mutawakkil often started their mornings with an hour of reading. This wasn't casual browsing, but serious intellectual engagement with philosophical, scientific, or literary texts. The caliph would settle into his cushioned reading alcove while the morning air was still cool, working through challenging passages with the same concentration that his subjects devoted to their own specialized crafts. The social aspects of royal reading were equally sophisticated. Rather than reading in isolation, the caliph would often be accompanied by a small circle of scholars who could provide commentary, answer questions, or engage in discussion about the texts being considered. These weren't formal lectures, but relaxed conversations that allowed the ruler to explore ideas with some of the most learned people of his age. The discussions might range from the practical applications of mathematical concepts to the theological implications of Greek philosophy. The practice of reading aloud was central to this royal scholarly culture. In an age when most people encountered texts through hearing rather than private reading, the caliph's library was designed to accommodate the spoken word. The acoustic properties of the room were carefully considered: the ceiling height, the materials used in construction, and the placement of furnishings all contributed to creating a space where the human voice could be heard clearly without echoing or distortion. The selection of texts for the caliph's private study reflected the extraordinary breadth of intellectual interests that characterized the Islamic Golden Age. A typical reading session might include mathematical treatises from India, astronomical works translated from Greek, philosophical discussions from Persia, and poetry from Arabic masters. This wasn't dilettantish browsing, but serious engagement with the cutting-edge intellectual work of the era. The physical demands of royal reading were managed with characteristic attention to comfort and health. The caliph's reading sessions were structured to prevent the eye strain and physical fatigue that plagued professional scholars. Reading periods were interspersed with gentle movement, walks through the garden courtyards, or time spent in contemplation beside the fountains. The ruler's schedule was arranged to take advantage of natural body rhythms, with the most challenging intellectual work scheduled for times when mental energy was highest. The relationship between the caliph and his personal library staff was unlike that found in any other medieval court. Rather than being merely servants, the scholars who managed the royal collection were treated as intellectual partners. They were expected to know not just the contents of the library, but the ruler's particular interests and reading patterns. A skilled librarian could anticipate which text the caliph might want to consult based on his recent reading, or suggest new works that would complement his current intellectual pursuits. The copying and commissioning of new manuscripts for the royal library was a process that combined scholarly rigor with artistic achievement. When the caliph desired a particular text, it wasn't simply copied, but often enhanced with commentary, illustrations, or supplementary materials that would make it more useful for private study. These royal manuscripts were unique creations that reflected both the ruler's intellectual interests and the highest standards of medieval book production. The international connections of the caliphal library system created opportunities for intellectual exchange that spanned continents. Manuscripts were regularly exchanged with libraries in Cordoba, Cairo, and other centers of Islamic learning. Scholars traveling between distant cities would carry letters and book recommendations from one royal library to another. The caliph's reading room was connected to a network of intellectual relationships that made it possible to access the latest developments in scholarship from across the Islamic world. The contrast between this royal intellectual culture and the popular image of medieval monarchy is striking. While European kings of the same period were often illiterate and devoted their leisure time to physical pursuits, the Abbasid caliphs were expected to be learned men who could engage seriously with the intellectual developments of their age. This wasn't mere pretension, but a genuine commitment to learning that shaped political culture throughout the Islamic world. The decline of this scholarly court culture paralleled the broader political fragmentation of the Islamic world. As the Abbasid Caliphate weakened and political power shifted to military commanders and regional governors, the resources and attention devoted to intellectual pursuits diminished. The royal reading rooms were gradually converted to other uses, and the tradition of scholarly rulers faded into memory. The influence of this royal intellectual culture extended far beyond the palace walls. The caliph's patronage of scholarship and his personal example of serious reading encouraged similar pursuits throughout the upper levels of Islamic society. Wealthy merchants, successful physicians, and prominent judges all created their own libraries and reading rooms, modeling them on the royal example. The culture of intellectual leisure that began in the caliph's private quarters spread throughout the educated classes of medieval Islamic society. The physical remnants of these royal reading rooms have largely disappeared, victims of political upheaval and changing architectural fashions, but their influence can still be traced in the design of traditional Islamic libraries and study spaces. The emphasis on natural light, acoustic properties, and the integration of reading spaces with gardens continues to influence Islamic architecture today. As you settle into your own comfortable reading space tonight, consider the luxury represented by these royal libraries. In an age when most people struggled simply to survive, the Abbasid caliphs created spaces devoted entirely to the pursuit of knowledge and understanding. Their reading rooms represented not just personal comfort, but a civilization's commitment to learning as one of the highest human pursuits. The gentle sounds that filled these royal reading spaces, the whisper of turning pages, the soft murmur of scholarly discussion, the distant splash of fountains created an atmosphere of intellectual serenity that supported the deepest forms of human thought. In our noisy, distracted age, the calm focus of the caliph's reading room offers a model of how physical space can be designed to support mental life. The legacy of these scholarly rulers extends beyond their individual contributions to learning. They demonstrated that political power and intellectual achievement could be combined in ways that enriched both. Their example influenced concepts of leadership throughout the Islamic world and created expectations about the relationship between rulers and learning that persisted for centuries. In the quiet hours before sleep, when the day's concerns fade and the mind turns toward rest, the caliph's reading room offers a vision of how intellectual life might be lived. Surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of ages, supported by physical comfort and aesthetic beauty, engaged with the greatest minds of human history, this was luxury defined not by material excess, but by the quality of thought and the pursuit of understanding. As our journey through the libraries and reading rooms of the Islamic Golden Age draws to a close, you find yourself back in the comfort of your modern bed, surrounded by conveniences that would have seemed miraculous to the scholars we've encountered tonight. The electric light that illuminates your room at the touch of a switch, the climate control that maintains perfect temperature without thought, the easy access to information that requires no more effort than touching a screen, all of these represent luxuries beyond the dreams of even the wealthiest caliphs of medieval Baghdad. Yet in our exploration of their world, perhaps you've glimpsed something that we have lost in our age of instant everything: the deep patience required to hand copy a single page of Aristotle, the meditative focus needed to preserve ancient manuscripts, the quiet dedication that drove scholars like Al-Kindi to spend decades translating works that might be read by only a handful of people. These represent a relationship with knowledge that our faster world has largely forgotten. The librarian whose ink-stained hands we imagined at the beginning of our journey understood something profound about the fragility of human learning. Each manuscript existed in only a few copies, scattered across vast distances, vulnerable to fire, flood, war, and simple neglect. The preservation of knowledge required not just individual dedication, but entire communities committed to the slow, careful work of copying, translating, and protecting irreplaceable texts. The weight of this responsibility shaped every aspect of daily life in the great libraries of the Islamic world. Al-Kindi's patient work of translation reminds us that the greatest intellectual achievements often happen quietly, almost invisibly. His careful attention to finding precise Arabic equivalents for Greek philosophical concepts created the foundation for centuries of Islamic philosophical development. But this crucial work required a kind of sustained concentration that our distracted age finds increasingly difficult to maintain. His example suggests that the most profound contributions to human knowledge often come not from dramatic breakthroughs, but from the accumulated effect of countless hours of careful, methodical work. The mystery of the House of Wisdom offers a different kind of lesson about the relationship between knowledge and power. This legendary institution represented perhaps the highest expression of a civilization's commitment to learning for its own sake. The fact that we cannot fully reconstruct what was lost, that so much of its collection and methods remain tantalizingly beyond our reach, reminds us that human knowledge is always more fragile than we imagine. What seems permanent and well-established in one generation can vanish almost without trace in the next. The scholarly luxury of the caliph's reading room provides a model of how power might be exercised in service of learning rather than mere domination. These rulers understood that true authority came not just from military might or economic control, but from wisdom and learning. Their private libraries represented a form of wealth that couldn't be stolen by invaders or depleted by spending the treasure of accumulated human understanding. Together, these glimpses into the world of Islamic Golden Age scholarship reveal a civilization that understood something essential about the nature of human flourishing. They recognized that the pursuit of knowledge was not a luxury to be indulged only after more practical needs were met, but a fundamental human activity that gave meaning to all other pursuits. Their libraries weren't just repositories of information, but temples dedicated to the belief that understanding the world was among the highest human callings. The physical demands that would have exhausted us, the long hours of copying by candlelight, the eye strain from deciphering faded manuscripts, the back pain from hunching over writing desks, were accepted as necessary sacrifices in service of something greater than individual comfort. These scholars understood that significant achievements require sustained effort over long periods, and they structured their lives around this demanding but rewarding reality. As you drift towards sleep tonight, consider what we might learn from their example. In our age of rapid change and instant gratification, the steady patience of medieval Islamic scholars offers a different model of how to approach learning and understanding. Their commitment to long-term projects, their willingness to spend years mastering difficult texts, their acceptance of work that might never bring personal fame or recognition, these qualities enabled achievements that still influence human thought today. The silence that ruled their libraries wasn't empty, but full, pregnant with the concentrated attention of minds engaged with the greatest questions human beings have ever asked. The stillness of their reading rooms provided space for thoughts to develop slowly, naturally, at the pace required for genuine understanding. In our noisy world, their quiet dedication offers a reminder of what becomes possible when we create spaces and times for deep, sustained thinking. The gentleness with which they handled ancient manuscripts reflects a broader respect for the accumulated wisdom of previous generations. They saw themselves not as competitors with earlier thinkers, but as inheritors of a great conversation that began long before their birth and would continue long after their death. Their role was to preserve, understand, and when possible, extend this ongoing dialogue between human minds across centuries and cultures. Perhaps most importantly, these medieval scholars understood that knowledge is not a possession to be hoarded, but a gift to be shared. Their translation projects, their copying efforts, their international correspondence all reflected a commitment to making wisdom available as widely as possible. They worked not for personal glory, but in service of human understanding itself. The warm glow of candlelight in ancient scriptoriums, the gentle sound of fountains in palace gardens, the whisper of pages turning in quiet libraries, these images accompany you now as you settle into rest. Let them remind you that the most valuable human achievements often happen quietly, sustained by patience, dedication, and a deep respect for the power of human thought. Sleep peacefully, knowing that the wisdom preserved by countless anonymous scribes, the insights gained through years of careful translation, and the understanding accumulated in libraries, both grand and humble, continues to enrich human life today. The Islamic Golden Age may have ended centuries ago, but its commitment to learning as a sacred pursuit remains as relevant and inspiring as ever. In your dreams tonight, perhaps you'll find yourself walking through the peaceful courtyards of the House of Wisdom, or sitting beside Al-Kindi as he puzzles over a particularly challenging passage, or resting in the gentle luxury of a caliph's reading room, where power and learning found their perfect balance. These visions of dedicated scholarship and patient wisdom offer a quiet refuge from our hurried world, a reminder that the most important human work often happens slowly, silently, and with love. Rest well, gentle listener, surrounded by the accumulated wisdom of ages and the enduring human commitment to understanding our world and ourselves. The scholars of Baghdad's Golden Age have shared their story with you tonight. May their example of patient dedication and quiet wisdom accompany you into peaceful sleep.